The hotel reeked of smoke and wet wool as the courier unfolded the latest cables. Paris was blackout dark. The lamp threw a tight cone of light while the double agent sorted phrases like a locksmith testing pins. He adjusted his tie, chose the bland tone his handlers expected, and wrote about troops that didn't exist. His real name was Juan Pujol García, a failed Barcelona businessman who hated dictators and wanted to fight them his own way. He tried twice to volunteer for the Allies and was ignored. So he invented an identity, convinced the German Abwehr that he was their man in London, and started sending them reports, first from Lisbon, then under British control from London for real. British intelligence gave him a code name, Garbo. The Germans called him Arabelle. Garbo did not work alone. He was the center of a web he built out of thin air, dozens of imaginary sub-agents across the United Kingdom, each with a backstory and a human quirk. None were real, but Garbo kept household ledgers for them, filed expense claims, and even reported when one of them got sick. He warned Berlin when they missed a ship departure, blaming a flooded road or a broken bicycle chain. British censors let small truths pass while directing the bigger lies. The result was a source the Germans trusted because he had cost them money and pride. By 1944, the Allied plan for deceiving Hitler had a name and a cast: Operation Fortitude. Fortitude North threatened Norway. Fortitude South pointed at Pas-de-Calais, the shortest hop across the Channel and the most logical landing site, if logic were in charge. It wasn't. The Allies needed Hitler to believe that Patton commanded a massive 1st U.S. Army group in Kent, ready to cross to Calais after a decoy feint elsewhere. Inflatable tanks stood in fields. Phantom divisions lived in paperwork. Radio traffic chattered in patterns meant to be overheard. And at the center of the narrative, Garbo fed Berlin the steady heartbeat of daily life inside a fake army. He wrote like a worried patriot. He complained about rationing and train delays. He slipped in items only someone living among troops might notice. Vehicle markings that changed during exercises. Rumors about new boots for beach work and bulky life vests appearing everywhere. He also sent the red herrings his case officers wanted. Large fuel dumps west of Dover, a traffic pattern that made Kent look like a staging yard, a fixation on Pas-de-Calais that never relaxed. German analysts weren't fools. They graded agents harshly and checked claims against photos and signals. Garbo survived by being right about small things long enough to be believed about big ones. When a convoy sailed, he sent a notice, just late enough that the Germans couldn't use it, but early enough to look useful. When he guessed wrong, he blamed a sub-agent and asked for forgiveness. He kept asking for money to cover expenses, a trick that made Berlin feel ownership. June approached. The invasion timetable narrowed. Weather would decide the day, Rommel said so, and so did Allied meteorologists. On June 4th, storms hammered the Channel. German analysts said no assault could launch into such seas. Eisenhower postponed. In the early hours of June 6th, the invasion fleet moved. Paratroopers dropped into hedgerows. Allied ships turned their guns toward French beaches. The message to Garbo was plain: keep the illusion alive even as the real war began. Shortly after 3 a.m., Garbo warned Berlin by wireless. Some units were moving toward Normandy, but it looked like a diversion, an opening blow to fix German forces, while the main landing came later at Pas-de-Calais. From Berlin's point of view, Garbo had called it, Normandy was a feint. Hitler and his staff kept their armored reserve, particularly the 15th Army, near Calais. Field marshals argued, phones crackled, orders reversed like tides, but the core remained. The big punch would land where the Channel narrowed. Even after Allied troops were ashore at Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Utah stabilized, the German High Command hesitated. They had to guard against the second blow Garbo kept promising. The longer they waited, the more time the Allies had to pour men and machines through the beachhead. Garbo layered the lie. He said the fictitious army under Patton was holding back. He said his sub-agents had seen officers studying maps of Calais. He described barracks filling and convoys idling in orchards for secrecy. London's deception teams backed his stories with fake radio chatter and paperwork. When German reconnaissance photographed dummy landing craft and inflatable armor, the images matched Garbo's narrative. Truth and fiction marched together. Some on the German side sensed a trap. Von Rundstedt pressed to release panzer divisions, but he wasn't the only voice, and Hitler kept them pinned. In that confusion, deception worked. Garbo fed Berlin one more assurance. The main attack was still to come. For weeks after June 6th, the 15th Army stayed near Calais, waiting for a blow that never fell. That delay spared lives at the beachhead and in the villages behind it. It didn't end the hedgerow fights or the slaughter at Caen, but it slowed German concentration at the critical moment. Garbo asked Berlin for an Iron Cross, and got it. He accepted it with dry humor, knowing what it meant to be trusted by enemies. After Paris fell and German lines collapsed, the deception story stayed quiet. Secrecy had its own timetable. Years later, the world learned that a Spanish man with no military background had built a fake army in the heads of his adversaries. The British had paid his rent, vouched for his invented sub-agents, and kept him safe as bombs fell on London. After the war, Pujol vanished into a small business in Venezuela under another name. His grave was unmarked for years, but soldiers who crossed on D-Day sometimes talked about a spy who kept panzer divisions out of their way long enough for them to make it off the sand. There were other parts to the deception, double agents like TATE and BRUTUS, false radio nets, phantom divisions drawn on maps until they felt real. Fortitude was a system, not a single daring trick. But every system needs a voice, the other side believes, and in 1944, that voice was Garbo's. By the time the first landing craft touched down, he had planted the idea that Normandy was the opening scene, not the main act. To see his mark, look at the calendar. The 15th Army near Calais did not move in force for weeks. When it finally budged, the Allies had a port, airfields, and logistics in motion. The deception didn't win the war by itself. Soldiers did, one hedgerow and one gun pit at a time. But Garbo changed the shape of the fight. He made the enemy hesitate. In war, hesitation at the right moment is a gift. The scaffolding around Garbo had weight. The double-cross system turned captured German agents and fed them curated facts. Their signals aligned with Garbo's. The notional 1st U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, existed on paper with order of battle charts, headquarters signs, and even traffic plans pointing toward Calais. Patton visited Kent to sell the story. German intelligence rated him the Allies' best field commander and assumed he would lead the main blow. Post-war studies by both sides concluded the deception kept the 15th Army near Calais for weeks, a delay that let the beachhead expand, Cherbourg fall, and airfields open in Normandy. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war.